the entire search committee, which is 6 members, or 5 musicians, 5 board, and 5 staff people. And then we meet separately with them and are able to converse about those things that our constituencies most care about, which has been a terrific process.
But I think things are very different from what they would have been 15 or 20 years ago. The musicians don't say, okay, there are some problems, management better fix them, and here are our demands. You feel as if you have a responsibility to be part of the process by which the problems are fixed. We
do. I don't think we're abrogating our responsibility to play our instruments. You know, it's in addition to what we're doing.
Nor are you, I assume, abrogating your responsibility to make sure you get paid adequately and that your working conditions are right and that you have job security.
I think one of the most interesting dynamics of this collaboration, or this co-option, that everyone is worried the musicians are going to get co-opted. I think we actually co-opted the board.
Really? How did that happen? What was that like?
I think there has been such interaction between musicians that the board actually began to identify with us as people, and as people that they cared about, and not just that big line item that they have to deal with in the budget, and that always causes them to have to raise more each year, but that's one of those things. To the point where I almost thought they should have come back to us to renegotiate because the red ink was getting deeper and deeper, and they didn't.
Really?
There was no will on the board to break the promise that they had made to us. So it's kind of an interesting...
But they were able to face the financial challenge and go and raise the money that they needed.
I think they decided they would take a deficit rather than renege on their contract.
Really? And do you think that was the right decision?
I'm conflicted about that, because I'm much more interested in the long-term health of this organization, because that's my job security.
Is this a discussion that you and your colleagues among the musicians had?
Some of us had. It was never an open public forum discussion. We were just happy that they're not going to renege on another contract, which, I mean, the whole contract concept is very unusual in that they can break it anytime they want to, and we can't. So it's a fascinating...
How does that work? Explain how that
is. Well, if an orchestra finds itself unable to meet its obligation, the board and the management come to the musicians and say, we have to renegotiate.
Right.
And we can't say no. Well, I guess we could.
Well, you could. It seems to me, and I'm sure that this has happened.
I'm sure it's happened also.
The musicians say, oh yeah? You're making these numbers up. Why should we believe this?
Sure.
It's your job. Go out and raise the money. Don't come to us because you're having problems.
There's, I think, a number of musicians in this world who feel that there are 2 sets of books being kept. And I must say, I went to every single board meeting of the New Jersey Symphony for about a 12-year span. And I don't think they're smart enough to keep 2 sets of books. I don't think any of us are smart enough to keep 2 sets of books. That takes way too much time. And to what end? You know, just to fool the musicians in negotiations, it would be an awfully large effort.
Okay, this implies a whole bunch of things. One of them is that they're not smart enough to keep 2 sets of books, but they are smart enough to govern the organization.
You hope that that's the case.
And that you have had access to the books.
Yes. The one thing that we have had is full access to all financial data for the symphony, which is a very daunting thing. I think that adds a new dimension to what musicians have to learn if they want to get involved in this. And it's nothing to be scared of. We all have to deal with our own budgets.
Right.
We all understand, you know, when that credit card is due, you know, you've got to make that payment.
Yeah.
So, you know, it happens basically on the same thing. You have a payroll you have to meet. That's every 2 weeks. That's your credit card payment that has to be made.
Right.
And if you can't make it, you've got to find the money from somewhere.
But at the risk of repeating myself, it's a fresh new attitude for musicians to stop saying, well, okay, you say you're having financial problems, go out and raise more money. Right. That's your job, it has nothing to do with me. To saying, oh, maybe we have a problem here and we all have to figure out how it should be dealt with.
Yeah. And that's an evolutionary transition from one to the other. It's a lot of years of trust. It's a lot of years of seeing that there really isn't anything to hide and that people are working very hard against some terrific odds. And to the credit of the symphony, there was a real understanding that if you looked at the salaries of the Philadelphia Orchestra and of the New Jersey Symphony, compared the New York Philharmonic to the New Jersey Symphony, there's a big gap there. Just so the emphasis was saying, okay, we can't work 52 weeks a year. That's not in the near future of the symphony. Nor, I mean, we can't work 52 weeks a year because there isn't the market for it in New Jersey. In the symphony's history, 3 times have approached the 36-week level and then fallen back from it. So this time it was 35, and actually 36 because there's an additional outreach week available to the musicians. So again, we slip back.
So the evolutionary process, what helps it along is the atmosphere of trust, I guess on one side, and then the need that the problems are severe and it's no longer possible to say somebody else has to solve them.
Sure. And the one thing that I wish there were a way to solve this question. So often orchestras have to get to the brink of destruction, to where they're about to go out of business before that trust is found between the parties. I don't know what can short-circuit that part of the equation. That this should be something that can develop without everybody being worried that the institution is about to disappear. But that seems to be the catalyst in so many cases.
And not only, I think, in orchestras, maybe in many areas of life, but let me bounce that one back to you. Do you feel that you have a responsibility or a role in developing ways for everybody to act a little bit sooner?
It's an interesting question, especially relative to what we were talking about earlier, where I could see the red ink was going to drown the organization and that they should be acting, and they didn't act. And probably had I been a little bit more, I don't think I was on the orchestra committee that year, so I wasn't at the board meetings at that time. But I was on the financial oversight committee, and so I saw this. And that was a really tough equation. I would hope so. I would hope that that's the way we're trying to look to safeguard the future of our institutions financially.
Do you feel like you have a role? Okay, now I'm melodramatically imagining you as Paul Revere galloping out to the other orchestras saying, think about this, and act on it before it's too late.
I think there's nothing better than knowledge in these situations, and to be aware of what the orchestra's finances are, to develop relationships with board people so the trust is there. And it's not that I think some people often think that the finances of the orchestra should be a major state-held secret and put in a vault somewhere. But these are all organizations that are public trust. This is all the public's money, basically.
And as a matter of fact, their tax returns are public, so anybody can see what their finances are.
Yeah. And I think it's really the way the management and the board will approach these things, where they bring the musicians into their trust circle there and just say, we all have to deal with these numbers because they all determine our future.
Well, this is an interesting segue into something else that I know about what you've done in this field. And I must say, your work in it looms very large in my mind when I think about you, and what I think is the leadership role you've played in this business. Along with Tina Ward, clarinetist with the St. Louis Symphony, you've made a study of self-governing orchestras in Europe.
Right.
And have learned a lot of things that are just fascinating and could have some application here. I know that you've written very fascinating